scheme to have Trump's company pay for personal stuff for Trump Organization executives, as described in the indictment, as a scheme. So not only do those executives not have to pay for those things out of pocket, they would thereby dodge taxes on that, both from the company side and the employee side. Right? The indictment says that scheme was not limited to Alan Weisselberg and his family members who are compensated in that way. They describe other people who worked for the Trump Organization who benefited from this allegedly illegal tax evasion scheme. Similarly, the indictment says there were other Trump Organization executives who worked for the company, but they were regularly paid in ways that were designed to disguise their payment from tax authorities. They were regularly paid in ways to make it look like they weren't getting compensated as Trump Organization employees. They were getting paid as consultants or something. It has important tax consequences both for the company and for the executive getting paid that way. That's all spelled out in the indictment. It's spelled out in the indictment as a further part of the scheme to defraud. No other executives besides Alan Weisselberg is described as the beneficiaries of that fraud, but it is explicitly spelled out that he wasn't the only one who benefited from that kind of a scheme. I will also tell you that is exactly the kind of scheme described by New York Times reporters in September in their Pulitzer Prize-winning expose of Trump's financial adventures. They specifically described a scheme like that, a scheme like the one outlined in today's indictment, as it related to Ivanka Trump, the president's daughter. The Times described in detail financial records they discovered that showed Ivanka Trump being paid both as an employee of the Trump Organization and as a consultant to the Trump Organization in a way that seemed custom designed to try to evade taxes, both for the company and for her. That is the executive scheme described at the end of the indictment. Prosecutors say that Weisselberg benefited from such a scheme and that other executives did too. They are not named in this indictment. But that is the Ivanka scheme described last fall in the New York Times. And like I said, apparently there's more to come from this investigation. We've got much more on that in a second. One of the things that caught my eye is your reporting from last fall about a scheme that you uncovered basically by comparing different financial documents, which showed that the president's daughter, Ivanka Trump, was paid as a consultant in a way that seemed designed to avoid paying taxes on some of her income, a way that would have been advantageous both to her and also to the Trump Organization. I wondered if you saw any reflections of that scheme that you described, particularly in those later parts of the indictment where they described ongoing schemes involving multiple executives around the way their compensation was described to authorities.
You know, it sure did feel of a piece to me what we saw when we were doing our work with the payments, some of which went to Ivanka Trump. You know, you're seeing money that's coming out and being allocated. You know, Alan Weisselberg had some of that through a certain payment. And with Ivanka Trump, what we saw, and it's, others are involved as well, there was $26 million that we found in consulting fees that were being paid from entities that Donald Trump controls outward. We couldn't see who they were going to, but we saw them going out, and it was like, wow. When we saw it, we were like, where were these going? And then what we found as we went along was we were comparing the taxes to other documents. We had public documents and other documents. And we saw some of it actually went to a company that is controlled by Ivanka Trump is an officer of, and then paid out to Ivanka Trump. And why that was a red flag is because she's an officer of the Trump Organization and she's paid more than $2 million. And she's also getting consulting fees. And that's sort of something that right away should be, you know, the IRS would be looking at it and saying, hey, they're only supposed to, these sort of payments should be ordinary and necessary. And you have to question why somebody who's making $2 million at the Trump Organization is also getting consulting fees. So you're sort of like, what's going on? And what, you know, we in our reporting suspected and we reported about was that this was an attempt by Donald Trump to reduce his taxable income and to transfer money to his kids. That may also have had the effect of reducing or of him voiding the a gift tax to them. So it's a way to transfer wealth potentially from one generation to another. We didn't have access to other people's tax information to see if potentially Eric Trump was getting some of these payments, if Donald Trump Jr. was getting some of these payments, but they are also a member and are part of that company that was getting the money that went to Ivanka.
And briefly to that point, the kinds of documents that would show that, if that's the case, is it your understanding from what we can see publicly about this court case that those are the kinds of documents that the prosecutors have?
I think I can't imagine that they don't have them by now. And the New York Attorney General had gone after the information from the company that received those payments called TTT, for Trump. So they've got those records. And I don't know how much further they've gotten, if they've gotten tax returns of other members of the Trump family. But that's a real just follow the money case. We were like, wow, when we saw it and we started to work through it, we dead-ended in the tax returns. But then because Ivanka Trump had gone to the administration, she had financial filings, and we were able to match them up. I have worked with two great reporters on it, Russ Buettner and Mike McIntyre, and it was a great effort. Took us a long time to put all that together, but it's there, and it's one of the things that the Manhattan DA is looking at.
I mean, one of the important threads to pull from that Pulitzer Prize-winning reporting at the New York Times based on Trump financial records is that, among others, it appears that Ivanka Trump benefited from the type of scheme that's described at the end of the indictment today, that Trump executives were compensated in ways that were deliberately designed to help them evade taxes and to help the business evade taxes on their behalf. Alan Weisselberg is being charged for benefiting from that scheme. The indictment says other executives also benefited from that scheme. And now we've got solid reporting that the investigation continues. That raises the prospect that further charges could be brought against his children.
Yeah, it does. And I think they should be quite anxious right now. Donald, on the other hand, will expect the same kind and level of loyalty from them as he expects from Alan. As far as Donald's concerned, they have what they have because of him, and they should be willing to take whatever hit they're going to take. He doesn't understand, I guess, how these things work. Prosecutors won't stop at my cousins. They will be going for the bigger fish, which would be Donald, who's been running this organization for over 30 years now. So I think he would be surprised to learn that I don't believe my cousins would exercise that kind of loyalty towards him, because his relationship with them and their relationship with him is entirely transactional. So, and conditional, I should say. So they're not going to risk anything for him, just as he wouldn't risk anything for them. So it could get really, really interesting as these things unfold, because there are so many more documents that New York prosecutors have at their disposal.
So you have more confidence that Alan Weisselberg wouldn't cooperate than you do that the former president's children wouldn't cooperate.
Yeah, I think as far as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, but it seems that as serious as these charges are, they may not end up with jail time or any significant amount of jail time. And the downside of cooperating with prosecutors for Alan Weisselberg might be larger than the downside of going to jail if it's for a short enough period of time. So again, it's going to be very interesting to see just the case that can be made and the sentencing, if it comes to that, because I think that will factor in for sure. But I'm much less sanguine about my cousin's loyalty to their father.